But yeah, I'm going to give an overview of the large forest owls in the region, the ones that we're targeting. This talk is based on a slideshow which Dave Millage prepared and Angus kindly put together at last minute. So forgive me if I make any blips and blops, but I'll do my best. All right, so powerful owl. It's a very big owl. It's listed as a threatened species. It's the largest Ninox owl. So the Ninox owls are the powerful owl, the barking owl, and the boobook owl. It's 60 centimetres. It's a big bird. It's got a wingspan sort of like that. It's a massive bird. So and it can take big prey. So it's taking brush-tailed possums, greater gliders, yellow-bellied gliders, and smaller prey. Flying foxes. It'll take birds as well. It's got this barring across, which is different to the barking owl, which I'll show you next. So when you look at it, if that barring going across is a good diagnostic. It's the females are smaller than the males. In the Ninox owls, they're the boobook type owls. The females are smaller. In the Tyto owls, which are the barn owls, it's the other way around. The females are larger. And they do two different types of calls. And let me see if I can get this. Ooh. That's a whoo whoo. And then males and females have different calls. So the male goes whoo whoo, and whoo whoo. So you get two different calls, and they quite often do it together. And if they do it together, that's something that we really want to know because it means that they're together. That's really good information for us. So, learning the owl calls is pretty important if you live out in the rural landscape, and those bird apps, they'll all have the calls on them. So if you've got that bird app, familiarise yourself with the calls. Okay, now onto the barking owl. This is a key species which we're looking at. There's only two hotspots in New South Wales for barking owl. The Pilliga is the main hotspot, and the Clarence and the Bunga is the second hotspot. So it's a pretty important area. Again, it's a vulnerable species. It's not so big. It's known as a winking owl. It quite often will close one of its eyes, and you can see that it's got the markings going down, not across. So large yellow eyes, and again, the females are smaller. And the call. And that's the male and female duetting. So you need to distinguish between your average Kelpie and your average Labrador. But they generally have that woo 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 woo. Okay, onto the mast owl. Well, we've got a mast owl here. This one's a male. The males in the mast owls and the sooty owls are smaller than the females. Very similar to a barn owl, but barn owls are smaller. And the key thing about mast owls is those big feathered legs, and the big talons. Barn owls, the feathering comes up quite higher, and they got much more dainty feet. And this one's call is much more raspier and harder. Well, it goes whoosh. I do it better than the owl, come on. Whereas a barn owl goes whoosh, 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 whoosh. The mast owl goes whoosh, really strong and strident. And those big claws and talons, when it's sitting in a tree, it's quite often haunched over. They don't call reliably. They're perch and pounce predators, so they'll sit up and they'll come down and take their prey off the grey. They're not so much arboreal predators like the barking and the powerful owl. That said, they're all opportunistic. They want to eat, so whatever's out there, they'll go for it. Oh, here we go. Screech owl. The barn owl does that, but it's a lot not so long and drawn out, and they tend to call on the wing more than these guys. Okay, the sooty owl, this is a rainforest owl. It does occur in this area along those really wet lines and those rainforested gullies. It's like a much darker owl. It's got a distinctive bomb drop call. very haunting, and they do a lot of trilling, these owls. This trill, and it's really hard to pick where it is. They really pitch that call, and really ethereal, you know. So all these owls occur in your local neighbourhood, and I think I've got the boobook owl, which most people are familiar with. It's the smallest one, heavily streaked, and it's got that dark. It's got those white eyebrows and the dark eye patterns. See if we got a call for it. No, we don't, but I can do it. Boop, boop. The importance of this project is we're trying to conserve their habitat. After the fires, a lot of their habitat features were damaged, notably large trees through the fire damaging the hollows, which provides important habitat for their prey base, which are primarily small arboreal mammals, but also those large trees which serve as their roost and nest sites. And Sue's going to talk a bit more about hollows later on, and Jimmy's made a fantastic video about hollows, so we're going to see that in a bit. So diet ranges, but primarily mammals. They do take other prey items, and we're monitoring a barking owl nest down at Southwest Rocks, and these birds have been displaced from their normal habitat, and now they're just focusing on birds. They're taking grebes off the water, they're taking gulls, terns and lorikeets and all sorts of things. They need to eat, they do move around, but typically powerful and barking owls will hunt through the tree canopies, picking off gliders. Mast owls perch and pounce, but that said, they will do whatever they need to make a living. Other signs, things that we need the community to do for us, is look out for pellets, which are regurgitation pellets, and there's a bit of a degraded one here, but they're cough balls, and this here is a bunch of cough balls that came from one owl roost, and there's a series of skulls from rats. I forgot to bring them, so not bad me. At least we've got a photo. And then there's tail snips, which there's a whole bunch underneath this owl here. If you find a patch of tail snips or an aggregation of cough balls, regurgitation pellets, it means that's where an owl is regularly using, and we really want that information, because then we can go and have a look and see where they might be roosting and where they might be nesting. So the nesting time for owls is generally from March through to winter. So the barking owls are just coming in now, so we're really trying to focus on barking owl. At the moment, mast owls and powerful owls probably have owlets in the nest, or even potentially starting to come out and get out on the branches and potentially starting to fledge. There's also whitewash. You can see on the other side, if there's an aggregation of whitewash, that's an area where something's defecating regularly, so we can look up and have a look. The powerful owl, quite often, you can get greater glider tails just hanging off trees. They look like Christmas trees. So, here's just more whitewash and aggregations of bones and refuse. So habitat use, owls have a big home range, 800 to 6,000 hectares. They don't just, they need to move around and share the prey around. They can't just take the gliders out of one tree and hope that they miraculously reappear. They have to move around. That's why not every hollow-bearing tree has an animal in it. All these animals have to use multiple homes. They don't use the same hollow day after day after day, because they know there's a goanna or a snake or an owl or something, or they get parasite loads. So they move around, and in different seasons they want different thermal qualities in the hollows, so they need to move around.
Does that mean that each pair excludes others from that range?
They're very territorial, and that's why they're calling. When they're going around flying, they're calling to say, this is my territory, you stay over there.
So they need a territory?
Depending on the productivity and the availability of hollows, and as habitats are degraded through whatever mechanisms such as bushfires, land clearing, logging, that affects that whole dynamic and that whole available habitat resource for their prey base and for them. So they need those large hollows. The big trees are really, really important. And then also those trees that are big without hollows, but are going to be the next generation of hollows. They take 150 years to grow a hollow that's going to be suitable. So these owls probably need hollows that are 200 plus years old. So we're talking about, you know, a housing crisis of grand scale. They can cross over their home range a little bit, but they tend to stick to their habitats where possible, and particularly so the barking owls really favour those wet, moist, productive areas in this region here. Sooty owls particularly just stick to the rainforest. Mast owls like the drier, open forest. They like the more grassy forest. And the powerful owl, they like tall forests with big prey items like greater gliders. So having greater gliders and yellow-bellied gliders in the landscape is really important for these birds. Oh yes, and they roost in dense vegetation. So they don't roost in a hollow. They use the hollows for nesting. They roost in dense vegetation, usually nearby to their nest tree when the nesting season's coming on. They breed for life in large trees, so greater than 18 metres high with an entrance of up to 20 centimetres. They favour, in this region, they favour red gum, grey gum, spotted gum. They will use other trees, big tallow woods and whatnot. They tend to breed every second year because they have to rear the previous year's young through. They've got to teach them how to hunt, and then they've got to boot them out, and hopefully they find a place to make a living as well. Yeah, chicks fledge 6 to 8 weeks after hatching. That's a barking owl. I think that one's from Kawilpa, which this tree, I think it's here. This is, yeah, it's in the video as well. Yeah, so that's, yeah, that's the, up there. That's the,
yeah, that yellow arrow is that hollow.
That's that hollow. And that's what happened after the fire, and you'll see this in the video. This is another tree in Banyula IPA, big grey gum, I think. And this one's in Newfoundland State Forest. There's a little owlet sticking its head out. That was from about 20 years ago. The tree's still there. We haven't been able to find any activity there. The tree's still there. And yeah, credits to Pete Knock, Dave Millage, Dave Gallen, Dermot, Alan and Angus for photos. Questions?
What sort of lifespan do the owls have?
They're a long-lived bird. I'd say 30 plus years.
In the wild?
Yeah. They're a long-lived bird. If they're not disturbed, if they're not exposed to habitat perturbations, a lot of them, you know, they hit windows, they hit cars, they eat rodenticides, and I'll talk about that later on. Or they don't eat rodenticides, they eat rodents that have been eating rodenticides. So there's a whole range of threats out there, and that's why they're listed as threatened species. They're a top order predator. They rely on a reliable prey base, which is erratic in a natural environment, let alone one that's been stressed. Question up the back, Pete.
How can I help? What's this thing? Wanted owls?
Oh, okay. Rightio. Gee, did I? What a loaded question. Okay. Rightio. So if this is a system called triangulation. So if you want to help us work out what your owls are doing on your property, get a piece of paper, put it on a clipboard, put a north point on it, like that, put a dot in the middle, which is you, and then sit on your veranda, and every time you're having a glass of wine or a cuppa or whatever, so early in the morning, I hope you're not having the wine in the morning, but first thing in the morning or later in the afternoon when the owls call, we're really interested in when they wake up, which is just after dark, and they wake up and then they make a call. And you hear that call and you hear it over this way at 6 p.m, and you think it's so very a long way away, draw a long arrow, put a time on it and put a date and put what species it is. Then next day, in the morning, wow, barking out calling. And then once you sort of fill a page up and you go, that's looking a bit full, what do? Take a photo and send it to one of us, and then we'll collate that. And we can, if we're getting regular hits of powerful owl at 6 p.m. and then 5:30 a.m. day after day, we know there's a roosting site there or a nesting site, and we can use that data. And then we can also, if we know where you are, and we can then put those different triangulation things at, and see where they cross over if your neighbour's doing the same thing, or someone else on your same property. Very easy to do. So that's, keep an eye out for tails, little tail snips, whitewash, pellets. If you're worried about the pellets going missing, like getting washed away or whatever else, you can collect them for us. I would suggest that you don't use your bare hands. Get 2 sticks and put them in a paper envelope, date it, record it, and then we can collect them. We'll send them away for analysis, and from that analysis we can find out what they're eating. Yeah, basically we can find out who's living in that environment and what species of owl it is. Yes.
Can you get any clues from the whitewash as to which species of owl?
Not so much from whitewash, unless they're leaving, unless they're molting and shedding feathers. Because usually where they're putting whitewash is where they're roosting, so they might be, shaken off the day and lose a few feathers. They're not like mammals where they preen, so they don't generally have their own feathers in their cough balls. So, yeah, the size of their cough balls can give some indication, but that's so variable. So.
Am I listening out?
Yeah, that's working. It's just going to it's going into the audio.
So am I listening out for any regular pattern, or is that only going to be during the nesting season that they're going to be
in the nesting season? You're going to get that. Well, no, all year round. If they're roosting outside of their breeding season and there's a pattern, that's good intel for us, because we can go to the site well before the breeding season and we can work out where they're hanging. We can then also get our habitat maps, which Angus was, those, and we can look at all the trees and go, well, that's a potential, and then we can start up a strategy of trying to know where to look to find the needle in a haystack, which is an owl nest. And sometimes you can flush the owls at their roost during the day, so then you can see where they are.
Yeah, before you were saying that they roost all over, they keep moving around?
They can, but during the breeding season, they will probably roost nearer to their favoured nest tree. They'll start to go back to their nest tree. They might roost within a couple of 100 metres, or the ones at South West Rocks are like within 25 metres. And they've been roosting there all summer, and now they're just starting to go back. Now they're starting to activate at the nest. So if there are any patterns, when they're going around doing their home range call, you'll wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and go, oh, I got an owl. Maybe not. You might save it till the morning. But look at... yeah, so, but yeah, we're interested in the patterns.